Burn the Business Plan, written by an American economist Carl Schramm in the year 2018, gives amazing insights on an entrepreneurial journey and what it takes for an entrepreneur to create a good company. This would be the first part of the four-part series of the book. Here we will talk about the things every aspiring entrepreneur should know before stepping into the world of startup, and also we will talk about the title of the book. So, let's get it started. Carl Schramm starts by saying that today, young entrepreneurs create more than 80% of all new jobs in the market, and these entrepreneurs contribute a significant chunk in a country's economy and its expansion. They are pretty much a big part of country's economic engine. But it is also true that the entrepreneur is betting against all odds, where despite knowing that about 8 in 10 startups fail within the first 5 years of its existence. The real story of most entrepreneurs is that they never went to fancy schools or universities, and most of them started their startup life after spending good long years in some job or a service. The average age of an entrepreneur is nearly 40 years, and more than 80% of the companies are started by people over the age of 35. Most entrepreneurs are between 35 to 45 years old. And nowadays, entrepreneurs over 55 years old create more companies and successful companies than those under 35 years old. So, it wouldn't be wrong to say that with age, entrepreneurs get more resourceful and experienced about how businesses and companies work. Now, why does Carl Schramm emphasize on the title of his book, Burning the Business Plan? Well, he believed that business is simply too fluid, and unpredictable markets set the directions to the business, which can be way different than the created business plan. He reminds us that we entrepreneurs are already in a world where nothing is predictable, and it's absolutely foolish to have a concrete plan and thinking that things would work adhering to the plan. Entrepreneurs must learn how to dance to market rhythm and tempo. Planning is just a waste of time and doesn't deserve much attention by the entrepreneur. Giants like Apple, Cisco, Google, Walmart never wrote a business plan, but changed their plans, strategies, objectives, and whatnot except their vision for the company. Business plan is for the investors, not for entrepreneurs. Let us try to understand why. The idea of creating a business plan came around the same time as venture investing, somewhere around 1970s in the Silicon Valley. The business plan made the job of comparing proposed ideas much easier for investors. The primary interest was liquidity event, which is also called as IPO, where the investors usually plan to make the exit from the company to generate profit from their earlier investments through the IPO, where people are offered the shares which are liquidated by these investors for the price listed by the investors and the board of the company. These investors treat a company like a house flipper to generate profits, which is something an entrepreneur never thinks about when creating the company. That's why in the 1980s, startups backed by venture capital investors were 13 times more likely to go for an IPO than to be bought by a large corporation. Today, however, things have flipped. A venture-backed startup is 7 times more likely to be bought by a big company than to go for an IPO. For an entrepreneur, her company is like a child and deserves treatment like their own kid. The sole narrative of writing a business plan for any entrepreneur focuses on winning financial support of venture capitalists. Now let's see what things you should keep in mind when starting a startup. Here Carl Schramm mentions a few things. This is how it goes. First up, you can only learn by doing. The only way to know how to start a company is by starting a company, because no entrepreneur steps into the same river as another entrepreneur. Maybe you will suck initially, but the learnings and experience it provides makes you a better entrepreneur for the future. Because once a person believes of creating a business and company and his mind is occupied with it, he will never favor to go for a job over the entrepreneurial path. Second, you will learn more in a company than at a college. The average entrepreneur works for someone else for nearly 15 years before starting his own business. When you work in a company or an industry for a good time, you are more likely to observe the loopholes, inefficiency in the overall business model, realize untapped market space, which would help you think of a better business idea. Additionally, this also helps you to understand the working culture of a company, how people behave, and understand people's perspective towards jobs, employment, management, authority, etc., which you will be responsible for in your company when you hire people. Third, good companies don't happen overnight. Initially, no company makes sense to the market, and only by constantly adjusting to the market environment. Consumer behavior and constantly improving the product accordingly gives a value to the company and the market. This can take years, and it's wise to be patient and give your startup a good time to grow and innovate. Google took 7 years to know their true space and market. GoPro took 12 years. Microsoft and Oracle took 12 years. Amazon took 10 years. On average, the company is owned by the founder and co-founders for roughly 10 years before IPO or acquisition. Fourth, every startup has one CEO. A startup is more likely to succeed if there are 2 or more founders. Because if a founder does not have a co-founder, this is evidence that no one has confidence in his idea. But irrespective of the number of founders and co-founders, there should be only one entrepreneur-in-chief, which means the person who gives a direction to the company. He is the person who sparked the idea of the company, its vision, and the one who brought people together. This is important because conflict of ideas among the founders and co-founders is no less than a slow poison for the startup. Fifth, when you start a company, you are the boss. The very first challenge for any startup and any entrepreneur is to hire the first handful of employees for a strong role. People who will help the entrepreneur to transit his idea into the product. Often it is tempting to hire friends and family for this role because of easy accessibility. But we hardly know these close ones outside of friendship and family relationships, and they are reluctant to dampen your aspirations with tough questions, which is important because it helps you prepare and makes you question your thoughts on the business. Plus, it is also very difficult to make hard decisions on them in the later stages of startup when they don't perform as per requirements and many such things because you can't part your ways from these people because of the close relationship. 6. And at last, money is what it's about. If you are not starting a business to make money, it's better to go home. Making money for your business and life is critical for survival and growth, and it's the same money that solves 99% of the problems. Money is the motivation for changing the career and moving in the direction of uncertainty and all the risks that comes along with it. In the next part of the book, Burn the Business Plan, we will learn why to create a company and what motivates any entrepreneur to dedicate all their resources and time for their startup. Stay tuned for it.